Just clear my throat, get ready for it. Hello! Welcome to Stephen University!
You're definitely starting like that.
That's Onion Gang. And now over to Chris. Let's just jump straight into it. I think in future I'm going to replace all presenter voice bits with that now. I think because let's be honest, Chris, it's an improvement.
Yeah, and people were wondering what you sounded like in your teenage years, and now they know.
Yeah. Dad, I have more spots than I care to talk about, and I'm scared to talk to girls. I think that's still true. That second part.
I was going to say, I think you are scared to talk to girls still. Not Nadia. There's one girl you're not scared to talk to, but the rest. Whew.
Terrified, mate. Run the other way. Absolutely. Actually, I think having a relationship for as long as I have, not to tangent immediately, but for being in the relationship for as long as I've been in the relationship I've been in, has made me the exact...
You can't clarify how long for you. For
14 years.
Mm-hmm.
Has made me the opposite. Like I have never had an issue talking to a stranger that's a girl. Like since my sort of teenage years. Yeah, because there's no pressure, because it is by default completely sexless. Do you know what I mean? Like I know that sounds like a strange sentence to utter. But
see, even when I was single, I assumed that there was never any chance of sex with anyone I was speaking to.
But I don't just mean that in terms of literally sex. But I just mean there is no there can be and wouldn't be any interest in that either way. So it didn't. Do you know what I mean? So like that's no longer a factor.
Yeah.
So by default, it's like it takes any potential source of awkwardness out of it. So yeah, I've it's not something I've had an issue with since I was quite young. But I was awful when I was younger. It's true.
I've always had so many female friends. I've never been afraid to like inadvertently sound like I'm hitting on someone. So like if a colleague wears something nice, I'm like, oh, it's a very pretty top you're wearing today. You look good in it. And like they usually know me well enough to know like, okay, fine. But if other people are around, they're like, why are you hitting on Gemma? I'm like, I'm not. Like I'm just paying her a compliment. Like I'm just saying it how I see it. Like
yeah. What was that one we had on? Was it a great makeup facial situation? Do you remember that one? The perfect makeup facial scenario was the bad, awkward, not that the opposite end of the spectrum. So if you're doing it right and getting away with it, that the other guy isn't.
Yes.
Anyway,
yeah. Well, the other guy was you in that story, if memory serves. No. Oh no, it was someone you work with.
Yeah. So I would never have said perfect makeup scenario. No, it's all sorts of weird and awkwardness to that. Anywho, let's talk about Onion Gang. So, Chris, what was it about? Sorry, what was it about?
See, Stephen and Onion are hanging out, and Onion. Stephen's narrating Onion's day, and then Stephen kind of in the narration points out that like when he leaves, Onion's lonely because he's only really got Stephen. Next day, Onion comes back and Onion's like, "Fucking let me show you something." So Stephen's like, "All right." So they run off into the woods, sounding weird. And
not as weird as when they're running off into the woods. They pass his house, and Vidalia is painting a partially naked yellowtail.
Yellowtail.
Let's not brush over that.
So that happens. So all these other people start popping out, and it turns out Onion's got a gang. And they're all a little odd.
Of course they are. They're Onion's friends. If I told you ahead of this episode that you were going to meet Onion's friends that you've not met before, you'd probably go, they're going to be pretty weird. Carry on.
Yeah, so what's the dude with the baby called?
Oh God, you asked me to remember their names. I never remember their names.
Oh, sorry.
There's Squash. I remember that there's one that's called Squash. That might be the one with the baby.
The Slingshot, but they're actually called Soup, I think.
Yeah, Slingshot is Soup. And there's one we're missing, isn't there? Oh, damn. Gazebo. No, Garbanzo.
Garfonzo, that's it. And
Yeah, so it's
Garfonzo...
Pinto, garbanzo, squash,
yeah.
and soup. There they are.
And Garfonzo only says the word Garfonzo. So they're all unique and weird. And they go on they race bugs. They go into town and pretend to be an adult and then open the jacket and take a picture, which obviously has flashing connotations. Turns out they've been doing that.
That's done so cleverly, though, because it's a flash, but it's
good.
a flash of a camera. That is genius for so many reasons.
So amazing. That leads to one of my favourite gags in the episode, which is they have pictures of all the people they flashed, and it's most people looking like, oh, go away, or looking scared, and then Garnet just stuck giving a thumbs up, which is the moment that I really started laughing. Yeah. So they start doing all zany stuff. Garfonzo pretends to die in a car crash, various bits. And then they have a bug race, and the implication is that Stephen is being asked to squash a bug, which he refuses to do, so he runs off. And then he realises he's the lonely boy, not Onion, because Onion's got this whole gang and Stephen doesn't. Onion comes back. Onion brings him back. He tries
to call Connie, doesn't he? And she's like, "Oh, is it a mission?"
Yeah,
and that made me that made me unnaturally sad. Like that really bummed me out. Look at character.
I agree. Why is Connie not just wanting to hang out with him? I completely agree.
Yeah, it's like it's shifted their relationship, I think, all this gem stuff, which is interesting.
Sorry, I literally got distracted then because I saw out the window my mate Phil and just went, "That's my mate Phil," thinking you would make a thing of it and it'd be a bit like the whole Dave's School of Driving thing.
I was just confused, Chris.
You carried on with the job at hand, and
because I was mostly confused. You saw your mate Phil, who I think I've met.
You've met Phil, yeah.
I have met Phil. And so he was just walking by. Did you make eye contact? Did you wave?
I waved, and then he sort of noticed and waved back, and another guy looked confused.
Right. Well, that's two guys confused then, because all I got was, "There's my mate Phil," and I'm like, "What? You're inside, like doing a podcast? Like what? He came into the room? Like yeah. I'll be honest with you. I moved on mostly because I didn't really understand what was happening."
Oh, right, okay. Well, I was then worried because Phil it looked as if Phil was coming across the road. I was like, "No, Phil, I'm not inviting you in, mate. Like, is it not clear from the fact that I've got a stack of books, a microphone, and these big headphones on that I'm in the middle of something?" Anyway, so Phil walks past, and then Stephen's all upset that he's the lonely boy. Onion comes back, shows him that the bug is still alive, drags Stephen to the forest, and it turns out they're summer friends. They're going home now. As subtly hinted in the episode that it was summer drawing to a close because Connie's going shopping for back-to-school clothes. Mm-hmm. And then Onion's all upset, and Stephen says, "Yeah, but you've got me if you still want to hang out with me." And Onion gets tearful, and they share a big hug. I thought this episode was fantastic. I thought it was so funny. Like,
definitely.
I thought it was so, and you know, for a while I was like, I think this is just going to be really funny, and I'm okay. That's enough. And then they're like, "Here's some heart." And we get some stuff about Stephen and Onion and loneliness or whatever. Uh-huh. What a joyful ride this episode was. So much fun.
Yeah, I echo those thoughts. I mean, it's not one of my absolute favourites, and I still think if I was choosing, I would say Last One Out of Beach City is probably better than this one. But
oh yeah, of course, yeah. They do different things, though. I think.
But I think for this kind of episode, you know, these kind of like sort of weird jaunts into like the world of one of the towny characters. What a glorious sort of way to spend 11 minutes, because it's interesting, it's funny. There's constantly weird shit going on, which keeps you pretty engaged. Again, all that weird shit leads to good jokes.
It's some of the most I've laughed out. Like I say, the minute he like puts the tomato on him and pretends to die, I was just laughing at the obscurity, and then like
I
the
assume you mean
flashing
absurdity.
joke and absurdity, and then like the photographs and Garnet just like, "Hey," like just some of the most I've laughed out loud.
Yeah,
in this
definitely.
Show.
And I think as a result that, like, you're right, it didn't really need any more than that. But I also found it very impressive that they managed to find a little bit of heart and a bit of a hint that Stephen and Connie's relationship is sort of coming under a bit of strain now through all this gem stuff. And I think that's true.
Well, yeah,
I think what we've learned, Chris, over the years is when you take a friendship and you sort of turn it into a routine, a thing you have to do, it just kills the friendship.
Yeah. I think if you
wow, you did not pick up on what I was making a joke about.
No, I do. No, I'm taking it further. I think if you're two people and you have a set mission, a set goal, a set thing you're doing, eventually you're just doing that goal. And there's no real friendship between you, and you keep working together to achieve that goal. But fundamentally,
and you still get on because the initial thing that made the friendship work is still there.
Well, or one of you's good at pretending. That's an option too.
But I think you struggle through because of the job. You've got the job to do, but the work thing or the task has sort of weirdly replaced the friendship. And whenever you meet up now, it's just to do the work thing. It's not, you don't hang out anymore.
Hey, we saw Ricky Gervais last year.
Okay, we hung out once in like 3 years.
I think we did podcasts either side of seeing Ricky Gervais as well, though.
Yeah, we did. And also, we did, it's like you could say, a couple of years ago, we went and saw Bo Burnham together as well. Yeah, we did. At the end of a week of filming a fucking web series.
I think the only time we've hung out and deliberately not done anything is when we were also with Jess and Nadia.
Yes.
So we literally... Yeah.
We need to sort that out. Can I just put that out there that we need to
Yeah, but look how you're putting it out there on a podcast. So
So there you go, guys. Hashtag the friendship is dead.
No, yeah, we do need to hang out in a way that's not doing the podcast. But the problem is, like, we don't. Whenever we're together, like, it's a good time to do a podcast. Both of us are free. That's the thing is, if we found the time to meet up, we could probably fit in a podcast. You're right. It's really bad. Yeah. To be fair though, the podcast is fun. But yeah.
But
like, I don't think.
Put it this way. I do relate to the Connie Stevens situation in this episode because I can see that happening where you do a thing together so frequently it becomes sort of like a job. And then there's a requirement to do that, and I think it does in a weird way change the dynamic of a friendship over time, and I think that's why it's interesting. And I'm not saying that I think if we stop doing these podcasts tomorrow, Chris, we would legitimately find ways to hang out and spend time together.
Yeah, and I also think we do, like, this is a weird tangent to go on, but I also think that we do, but just in case people are worried, we do so many podcasts that if we record roughly twice, we have 2 recording sessions a week, roughly is the way it usually pans out. Sometimes it's one at the weekend, one during the week, but 2 in a 7-day period is about the average. Yeah. The 10 minutes or so we spend shooting the breeze before we record and after, that in total is 40 minutes. So 40 minutes a week chatting to you. Even though we're doing something else, that's still more than I chat to most of my friends, apart from people I work with.
We just don't actually get to hang out and go for drinks or like.
Yeah. We don't live in the same place, so we wouldn't do that anyway.
Because there was a point before you sort of started settling down with job and where I thought that ultimately you would end up moving this way. I kind of assumed that's what you'd end up doing, but you didn't. You stayed home.
But I never assumed that particularly. So.
I don't know where that came from in my head. It's just, I guess most people I know who live in small towns desperately want to get out of small towns.
Just a small town boy looking for the what's the
actually, yeah. I mean, this is a crazy tangent now, but yeah, I found, bringing it back to Steven Universe. I found that story between Steven and Connie both really believable and also equally implausibly sad. And that's and what's crazy about it is it's not even really anything to do with the episode. It's one sentence and it's only implied. It's not even really explicitly stated that that's what's going on. But that's the vibe you get for sure.
Yeah, and I think I was a bit like when he was like my best friend Connie. I was like, no, Stephen, I'm shipping you. You're my secret love, Connie. What's all this best friend chat like? Even that isn't a very romantic phrase to use. So I think it's going to be very interesting what they do with that pairing, and like you say, that subtle hint. I think the Onion sadness, lonely friendship angle was played out beautifully. I thought it was a really nice direction to take it in, as was the kind of the Stephen thing. I think there were surely other people he could have phoned as well. Like, I think it's interesting when you link
if he'd have called the cool kids, they'd have hung out with him.
Yeah. I think they like that made that work, and I don't think it needed at all to be linked with sort of his anxiety about everything that's been going wrong. But I think this just kind of, next time they explore that storyline, this really adds to that. Like, you know, he's got all these worries and all this bismuth stuff and Jasper and stuff, and he's got no one he can hang out with. He's got no one he can talk to about it. And I think it's right not to explicitly link them here, but I think it's nice that they're building this picture up.
Well, that's what I kind of love about it, really, is because it's like it's reminding you that he's just a normal kid as well. So because if you can keep spending all your episodes building up this idea that Stephen is struggling with his, like we talked about that mindful education episode, and so, you know, Stephen's really struggling with. We talked about, like, he's a child and yet he's got all this pressure on him, and it's really, it'd be too much for an adult to handle, let alone this poor child. You know, we talked about that to some degree. But then you throw this episode in and you combine those thoughts, and it's like, it really does solidify. He's not just a child still. He also still has all of the worries a child would have, as well as all the other shit we know about. So he's worried about being lonely or not having friends, or, you know what I mean? Like the sort of stuff kids do genuinely concern themselves with, because there's not much else to worry about, because they haven't learned, they don't know enough about the wider world to be concerned about, the oncoming nuclear apocalypse. Really pushing that on this recording session. I don't know which episode we talked about it in, but that's twice I brought that up in the episodes we've recorded today.
I think an episode of Pointless Noises, so nothing these guys would have heard.
Okay.
But yeah. Dan is seemingly worried about the impending apocalypse.
Yeah, but my point is, like, kids do worry about quite trivial stuff, but it's to them, from their perspective, that is the equivalent of adults worrying about the wider stuff, because it's all they know. So it's all they worry about, but it feels as important and as big. And it's only as you get older and you realise that there's a maniac in charge of a very powerful country that you start to worry about other stuff and the wider context, and your trivial bullshit seems like trivial bullshit to you. But it's really crazy to think of Stephen, who's dealing with all this gem stuff, is also, who do I hang out with at the summer? I don't go to school. What happens when Connie starts to go back to school?
Yeah, it's a really interesting angle on things and on that character.
And I think that is really, really awesome and really well sort of plotted. And I think that even if they don't really go and do anything with the Connie Stephen sort of their friendship's shifted a bit story going forward, it doesn't really matter, because just hinting at it here is enough to sort of make you feel like that's kind of what's going on, and is something to be worth being concerned about.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely that. I was thoroughly impressed. I think, like I say, that combination of being so funny and doing all of that made it such an enjoyable episode. And I think the reason I'm so perky about it is because, like you say, it's not the same as last episodes. Last night in whatever that one was called, and it's not even
last one out of Beach City.
Last one out of Beach City, and arguably it's not even like an episode I refer to a lot, but Stephen and the Stevens. Arguably it's not even that. But for it to have been so enjoyable and such high quality, for if you'd have said to me, "Oh, this is going to be an Onion episode," I'd have been like, "Oh, okay." I think it's one of the best town-centric episodes that just deal with a town person. I mean, it's better than any Lars episode we've had. It's up there with some of the Sadie episodes.
Well, do you think it's better than the Lars episodes we've had? We've had some really we had some really good Lars episodes early on.
I meant to say Ronaldo there. Sorry, I was then thinking about the townspeople. It's better than any Ronaldo episode we've had. And some of the other cool kids maybe. No, I think Lars and Sadie have had some great episodes.
I think of the townies, the ones that have had the most success in terms of episodes about them are Lars and Sadie, and then the cool kids coming sort of behind that. And then obviously, yeah, you're looking at like your Ronaldo episodes and your Kikis and your Jennies and like some of the like more slightly separate ones. But yeah, I think
Look
this
at one
one.
we've
I think
had
this.
recently.
Go on.
The Mr. Frowny, Mr. Smiley episode. That was a great episode, but this was even better because it was funnier, it was warmer, the message hit home a bit more. Just a really strong episode.
Yeah, I'd agree, and it was funny because when I first saw this episode, I wasn't particularly fond of it. I didn't dislike it either, but it just sort of washed over me in a sort of okay, Onion's weird still.
You know what it is. It starts, and I thought. I found myself at one point looking to my phone, and I thought, oh no, I won't do that because like anytime I've looked at my phone for like because it's only 11 minutes long, so if you look at your phone for like 20 seconds, you're actually missing a fair chunk. And trust my luck, that'll be the chunk that something happens, and you're like, yeah, but what did you think of this? And I'm like, what? I don't remember that. Yeah, so right. I actively went, oh, I won't look at my phone and concentrated on the episode. But I think, and then, like I say, the turning point for me was the car crash, where it was just like, this is so obscure, this is weird, like, and funny. I think the reason the first time you watched it, it sort of washed over you a bit, is because it starts off, even though there's the good gags of like them running past a house and Yellowbeard's half naked, it essentially starts off as an episode where you think you can just look at your phone. It starts off as a like you say, it's just that. Oh, okay, Onion's a bit weird. It's only when it gets really, really funny that you're then engaged. And I don't think it gets laugh out loud funny until a couple of minutes in. So
yeah, I think I would agree with that.
Me,
I think when the intro starts, you immediately, it's like the episode invites you to disengage. It invites you to go, this isn't important. There's nothing valuable here, and you sort of that's not what it's intentionally doing, but that's the impression I think you could easily get out of the first few minutes. And I think if you don't successfully then re-engage, I think this episode could sort of wash over you in a bit of a haze. And that could manifest itself as you looking at your phone or being a bit distracted, or it could just manifest as you not really paying as much attention as maybe you should be just in general. So I feel like maybe that happened to me on first viewing, because I remember when we were talking about last one out of Beach City and we were really positive about it, I just remember thinking, oh god, we got Onion Gang next, which I didn't dislike, but it's really a non-episode. But I must admit, like you, on the rewatch, thoroughly enjoyed, and I think that's... And I think it speaks a lot as well, actually, to your... I don't know if it's just because we're doing it for a podcast and therefore you didn't want to embarrass yourself, but I think it speaks a lot to your level of engagement with the show now that you didn't let that happen first time round like I did. And you actually sort of was like, no, I'm going to actively make sure that I do this right.
Yeah, I think that is potentially more of a podcast thing, like not wanting to miss something that could be key. But it could also absolutely be the show, because I'd like to think, even if I'd have looked at my phone, I'd like to think I'd have had to have got pretty distracted to not have then been turned around when the episode gets really, really funny. Yeah. But I think it is equally possible, like you're saying, you maybe did the first time, where got distracted, wandered, and never quite got back in to catch just like how funny it had got. Because the ending, I think, works well because you've gone on a bit of a journey. And I think if you were looking away and didn't realise how, and I'm not saying you definitely were, but if someone was looking away, didn't really kind of register just how funny this was, then at the end they'd just be like, oh, okay, now there's a sad bit. But that's not as impactful if it's not like, oh, now there's a sad bit after all this really great comedy. Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, I agree. 100% agree. Yeah, 100% agree.
Is there any trivs?
Yeah, there's some stuff. I mean, I feel like we haven't we have analysed it, but I just feel like we've missed bits. I don't think we have. What do you think in general about Onion's friends and their behaviours and like their?
I think we've analysed ourselves quite a bit, and I think this is one of those episodes where there's not much to analyse, other than going, wasn't it funny when this happened? Yeah. I thought the friends were weird. I thought the friends were very clearly Onion's friends, which I thought was nice. I thought I like the fact that they're summer friends. And I like the fact that we might see them again, but they're not necessarily going to be there often.
And it's a really interesting concept, because I think that must be a real thing in beach towns, because there are families that spend their summers in beach houses on the in these weird coastal towns in America. That really does happen. And I remember one of my earliest experiences with that being a thing was there's an episode of The Simpsons where they do something similar, and Lisa makes a bunch of friends, new cool friends or whatever, and she actually fits in a lot better with them than Bart does because she's more like authentic. And then at the end of the summer, she has to leave, and it's like super sad. And I watched that episode as a kid, being really confused, just like I don't really. Like, this is an odd concept to me because that doesn't really happen in the UK, where you sort of go somewhere for the summer or whatever. But Kevin Smith has talked as well about a friend that used to stay in New Jersey, because they were quite near the coast in the summers, that he really liked and like got on with, and they had a big link because they both love Star Wars, and that friend was only like a summer friend. So that must be a real thing in the States.
I first came across it in Greece. Summer Lovin' had me a blast.
Oh yeah. I didn't see Grease till a little bit later in life. I was in my teens when I came across
really?
when I saw Grease. I knew what Grease was. I knew the music, but the story it's not something I ever sat down to watch until I was sort of a teenager, sort of 15.
What did you think? Was it too soon? Was it too late in the game to watch it? Or did
no,
it
I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. It's a good film. Yeah. I don't think I'll ever have
Grease...
that. I don't think I'll ever have the love for it that everyone else does. But that's probably just that might be a result of me watching it later.
Yeah, no, I got a bit of a nostalgia for it. I really enjoyed Grease Live. I thought that was great. Like, I don't know if you've watched that, but
no,
it's
I did not.
or certainly was on Netflix. Just as a live spectacle, I thought that was really, really good. And they changed some of the character stuff, which to me made more sense. But Jess, who's a big Grease person, watched it young, big fan of it, was just so angry that they changed bits. And I'm like, yeah, but that makes way more narrative sense for the character now. And she's like, I don't give a shit. They've changed it. I was like, yeah, but they've changed it for the better. Like, they've given that character more of a purpose. She's like, no. I'm like, all right, fine.
I get that.
So yeah,
I get that. There are situations when you feel a bit protective of these things, but
oh yeah, of course. I thought so I'm glad that they're just summer friends. I'm glad we're not seeing them.
What I was getting at with talking about that specifically was that it makes so much sense, and it almost feels like it was inevitable we were going to come across that concept in this show because it is set in a beach town, and I'm pretty sure, don't know for sure, but I'm fairly confident that either Rebecca Sugar as a child visited a beach town or lived in one and therefore experienced this. I seem to recall a conversation with someone where that so it makes sense the show gets to it, and I think not doing it through Steven but doing it through Onion is super clever, because I feel like Steven is weirdly isolated from the rest of the town because of his gemness, and I think that it makes more sense to do it through Onion like that. So yeah, I think they're a really clever addition, and there's plenty of room to bring them back, but there's also no requirement to have them back next week.
Yes.
We don't need to see Onion hanging out with them all the time, because you can just say it's not winter.
It's not summer. Yeah, no, absolutely.
It's not summer, sorry. Yeah. So yeah, that's pretty cool. In terms of Triv, Chris, there's not a lot, but there's some. It's revealed that Onion does not know anybody his age in Beach City. So it's an interesting point that like there is literally no one in Beach City around Onion's age that we've seen. That is strange, but also goes to prove how small Beach City is. Because we've talked about that in the past, that like there's like 12 people. They make the joke, don't they, when it was like the Beachapalooza. They were like, there's like 12 people that live here. What are you talking about? So yeah, this is the second episode, only the second episode, I think, to only have two voice actors in it. Zach Callison and Lamar Abrams. And the second, obviously, the other example of that was Kiki's Pizza Delivery Service, which had the voice of Kiki and Steven. I think her name was Regan Preston, I think.
She played both sisters, didn't she?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah.
Obviously, you've pointed out the sort of changing of the seasons, as it were. There's an interesting level of continuity here, actually, because in Same Old World, Steven shows Lapis that the leaves are beginning to change. In this episode, the leaves are changing the other way, and Connie's going back to school. So that's sort of indicating that like maybe a couple of months have passed during that time. Although
that's really cool.
Well, it is really cool until one little thing that kind of breaks that, and I'd need to look at the exact timings to see. But Connie's been at school recently because we did mindful education. That kind of breaks it a little.
Oh yeah.
So so that's a shame, but otherwise it really works. What's really interesting and the really cool bit of like trivia, that could just be that it worked out well, or it could be just incredible foresight and planning on the the work of the writers. But Yellowtail, if you might recall this, but when we last visited Onion's house, there was a dad's home list on a wall or a fridge that showed dates that Yellowtail would be home, and it showed he would be home September the 10th to the 17th, or September the 10th to the 17th, and this episode aired on September the 15th.
That's nuts. That's cool.
And obviously he is home because Vidalia is painting him. So and
That's
also
awesome.
September would be a back to school sort of month as well. So there's a lot that fits into that plan, even if the Connie thing doesn't quite work. So yeah, I thought that was really neat.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's a really cool piece of detail.
Yeah, I thought so. Pearl's framed picture on the side of the fridge, previously seen in Monster Buddies, but makes a reappearance. However, she is in her pre-regeneration outfit. I'm not sure if that's a continuity breaker or just a good continuity. I can't remember if that picture originally had her in the pre-regeneration outfit or not, but there you go. Obviously, the Onion and his friends putting on a trench coat is obviously a very common trope. And the idea of using a trench coat to flash is a common trope as well, so that's pretty cool that they sort of did that culturally. I think it's a nice reference.
I didn't think I'd ever see a flashing joke on Steven Universe.
I didn't either, but there you go. I think, though, the ultimate kids in a trench coat joke that will ever be done ever anywhere is BoJack Horseman. I don't think anyone is ever going to do better than Vincent Adultman and his business factory. That whole running gag, it might be one of the best versions of that I'll ever see, and I don't think anyone will ever top that. So yeah, 10 points to BoJack Horseman.
It does, and I haven't seen that because animation. But it does make you think how nuts it is that given that we had a flashing joke this week and last week we had it would sail over kids' heads, but we had subtle references to alcohol and driving, pushing through a red light. It's nuts to me that these two episodes haven't been banned, and yet other episodes which have far less risque,
like female characters embracing,
have.
cut it.
Yeah,
like insanity.
So weird.
Yeah, absolutely.
So weird.
And it's usually Cartoon Network UK, which makes me a little bit sad to be British when I hear that. But anyway, who knew we were such prudes in this country, Chris? Well, everyone. We're famous for it, but still, still. Anyway. Now, this episode makes an absolute boatload of references to Undertale, and I'll be honest with you, I've played Undertale, but I had no idea how many references this episode makes to that game, which is crazy. So if Chris won't know, because Chris isn't a big gamer, Undertale is sort of like an indie game that came out a few years ago, and it does a lot of weird stuff to sort of challenge the form of a video game and your expectations of a video game. There's some really interesting stuff in it where you have to make choices, and those choices lead to some really interesting commentary on video game play, and so it's really great. For those of you who, it really works mostly for people who are very familiar with video games anyway, but it is still really good. If anyone out there has not played Undertale, you absolutely should, particularly if you like Steven Universe. I think there's I could draw a weird parallel between those two for some reason in my head. I can't even verbalize what that makes sense. But Soup is loosely resembles the character of Frisk. The bug race references the snail racing minigame Thunder Snail. The scene where Steven chooses to spare the beetle that won the bug race parallels one of the mechanics in Undertale, which is the mercy mechanic. So in a weird way of sort of pointing out how much violence there are in video games, sort of making commentary on that, in the game Undertale, there are usually non-violent ways out of fights, and there's also a mercy mechanic where you can choose not to fight an enemy and instead spare them. And that's... They think it's the people who wrote this article certainly seem to feel that's a parallel between the bug race here, where Steven chooses to spare the bug. And then, of course, one of the more obvious references to Undertale is, I guess, this round of Onion Tales has come to an end. So Undertale, Onion Tale, pretty direct reference. And also, and this one, and this one is even the wiki or the Wikia page here lists this as a potential coincidence. But this episode actually was released on the 1-year anniversary of the game Undertale coming out.
I feel that must be a coincidence.
I kind of agree, but at the same time, cool that an episode clearly paying a lot of homage to Undertale, which is a very sort of has become quite an iconic game now, and I think Undertale will go down in the annals of gaming history. I think it'll be remembered really strongly, even if it is sort of this such a quirky indie game. I think that, I think it's cool that they've sort of managed to make it fit so well, considering it's an episode that references it so much. Obviously, they talk here about the Yellowtail posing in his underwear for Vidalia, which is a reference to a common trope, and potentially apparently his pose is similar, if not identical, to the pose made by the character Rose in the movie Titanic in the famous "Paint me like one of your French girls" scene, aka everyone's excuse to see what Kate Winslet's boobs look like scene.
But that's the pose you pull when, like, that's the same as any nudie art paint me scene in any movie. Like Titanic.
Yeah, I'd say so. I mean, it does very specifically seem to match exactly how she sat. But yeah, you're right. Let's see. Is there any other? Oh yeah, Garbanzo only says his name, which is similar to a Pokemon. Like Pikachu only says Pikachu. Garbanzo just says Garbanzo. So that's kind of it.
Did she get her boobs out in that scene, or did we just see Jack draw her boobs?
No, I mean, it's weird that you go back to that, but yeah, you do, because I remember distinctly.
I just can't remember that.
They showed the scene. They showed the film in school in a history lesson, and the teacher, I guess, forgot that there was nudity in the movie, and it all got a bit awkward when that scene played out.
What, in a lesson you were in?
Yeah.
That's amazing. If the teacher could you see the moment the teacher was like, "Oh shit, I forgot."
Yeah, you could see it escalating to that, and the teacher starting to fidget and go like, "Oh, what do I do? Do I turn it off? Do I skip it?" Like, I guess he'd gone, "Oh, it's a movie about the Titanic. I've got papers to mark. I'll shove that on. They can learn about the Titanic." And I can, get my marking done. I don't think the teacher thought it through, awesome. Yeah. So that was that went that way. I think in the end they just let it play out, but there was a lot of snickering. We were children, so
Yeah. That's
nudity,
fair. Okay, fair enough.
Nudity, giggling ensues. And I know that since then there have been a lot of sitcoms that have made jokes about people being like, watch Titanic, see Kate Winslet's boobs. That joke seems to. I seem to feel like a lot of sitcoms have hit on that joke for some reason, or maybe I've only noticed it once or twice and drawn a line. I don't know, but there you go.
I couldn't remember. There we go. Fair enough.
Yeah, I to be honest with you, if I hadn't had those two very specific experiences of noticing a few sitcoms making the same gag and that awkwardness in history back in high school, I probably wouldn't have recalled that either, to be honest with you, Chris.
What you're trying to say is you're not a raging Kate Winslet pervert.
What I'm trying to say is that I'm not the human manifestation of the Mr. Skin website.
That's so specific. I think being able to name check that website makes you sound more like a pervert.
That's a website that is advertised a lot on torrent sites.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
That's the one where you search for a celebrity's name and it shows you the movies they've been in nude, yeah?
Yeah, I would assume so from the adverts I see on. I'll be honest with you, I'm pretty sure it's a paid website, so I ain't going near it.
Yeah. That's it.
But my understanding of Mr. Skin is that's what it is. We have gone. This is the second time we've gone back.
Paid
to
what? You have to pay to You have to pay to enter the website.
I think so. I assume
That's
so.
nuts.
It looks like one of the paid ones. I don't know.
Well, anyway,
we are really off topic. This is
Hey, Steven Universe started it with flashing and having Yellowbeard be all Kate Winslet. So I don't think that's entirely our fault.
I'm going to clarify Yellowtail before everyone in the comments does. Yeah. The other cool thing, in the sort of cultural references, and this one I noticed immediately and I really loved, is that when Soup, Squash, and Garbanzo first show up, the masks they're wearing match that of Lock, Stock, and Barrel from Nightmare Before Christmas, which I thought was really cool.
Okay, cool. Yeah,
so if you've seen Night Before Christmas, you would know that reference. If you haven't, sorry, you're out of the loop.
Fair enough.
Great movie though.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you were never fond of it, were you? You're one of the people that just didn't get it.
Yeah, I think it's another one where I watched it too late. That's all.
Gotcha. Yeah. I have a big soft spot for it. I saw it very young, and I've got a big soft spot for that movie.
It's fine. Like it's I can see it's like I say I watched it too late. It's like me with Ghostbusters. I accept that if I'd watched it as a kid, I'd feel about Ghostbusters the way I feel about Back to the Future, but I unfortunately didn't.
I understand. Cool. I guess that's everything. So a little overrun, but it's
all good. We got hey. I think as a general rule of thumb, if we're gonna overrun, might as well be chatting about Kate Winslet's boobs and yeah.
Well, that's the problem. Is the last time we ended up doing this sort of a tangent, there's some people didn't find it particularly tasteful. We had on the 100th, we talked about what did we talk about? We talked about the Emoji Movie in Pornhub, and someone noted that it wasn't the most tasteful of comedy we'd ever done, which is absolutely true. It also wasn't the best comedy we've ever done, tasteful or otherwise. But there you go. These things happen. I think I said in my response at the time, which is like we just do what we do. Like if we're having fun, we're just going to continue talking, and if that doesn't work for you, sorry.
And if it does work for you, thank you.
Yeah, great. Then keep on keeping on. Anywho, different story. But yeah, thanks very much for listening, everyone. I think we hit on it with Onion Gang. So yeah, thanks for listening. We'll be back, of course, in a couple of days' time to discuss the next episode, which will have. I think it's going to be a 2-parter. So the next episode will contain the first part.
Since it's a 2-parter.
What's that? Sorry.
Have you got a hint since it's a 2-parter?
I'll just say the barn.
Oh, okay. Does that count as you giving a hint, even though you said you wouldn't give a hint if I asked for one?
Oh, you caught me out! No! Only like 3 episodes later as well.
I caught you out a lot sooner than I was expecting to catch you out. I did not think that would work.
You got so lucky because in my head I was looking for a hint when you asked. So I was thinking, do I have a hint this week? And then I saw one, was about to say it, and then you asked. And because I'd seen it, I just went into it. You won. You win. I'd shake your hand if you were here, Chris. You caught me out.
Beautiful.
Well done. Well done.
Thank you. I am pleased with that. I did not expect to
catch me out so soon. I didn't think you would either. I thought it would really take months for you to catch me out. I knew you would eventually.
It wasn't even subtle. Have you got a hint? Since it's my voice went up like 3 octaves as you could hear me. You could audibly hear me like, I'm gonna try. I'm gonna go for it. I'm gonna try. You got a hint? You got a little hint?
You win. Well, there you go.
Beautiful.
What can I say? But yeah, the barn is the hint.
Cool.
You were lucky I naturally had one. I think the prompt for me to react that way is when I don't have one. So you timed it very well.
Counts.
Of course it counts. Oh yeah, you've won. I'm not questioning that. I'm observing that your timing was perfect because had I not had a hint, the moment of thought it would have taken me to come up with one would have reminded me, and I would have been like, "Nah, good try." Yeah. But because I had one, good effort. Well done.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Chris is the victor.
Congratulate me below.
Yeah,
a 2-parter set in the barn.
I'm not necessarily set in the barn. I'd said the barn.
Okay, cool.
That doesn't mean we're not visiting the barn, but it doesn't necessarily mean we're spending the whole episode at the barn.
Yeah. Okay. Sweet. I'm excited.
Yeah, because you can take from that we will potentially see the other member of the Shorty Squad.
Yeah.
And what do you call her? The cute blue one.
The cute blue one.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's probably going to be a 2-parter. We'll see how long we record for. If it doesn't fit a 2-parter, it doesn't fit a 2-parter. I'm going to have to do something else to make the numbering work. But we'll see. We'll see. I think there's maybe enough there to talk about for that sort of time frame. It is a 22-minute episode.
Yeah, we're doing it. We're doing both parts. We're doing individual episodes for each part. Yeah.
No. It's like Bismuth. It's one episode.
Oh, it's 22 minutes. Right, I thought it was a part 1 and then a part 2. No, it's 22 minutes long. Right.
Yeah,
okay.
but it counts as episode 111 and 112 on like all the most of the official numberings. So we'll probably do it as well.
Right. So
like Bismuth, we'll do one recording session and split it.
And see how it turns out. Yeah. Okay. Cool.
So yeah, that's everything for this week. I've been Dan Doolan.
I've been Chris Billingham.
And we'll speak to you next time as we discuss Gem Harvest.